Good day, everyone. First of all, thank organizers Gerald and Ron for including the paper on the symposium, and also thank for their early feedback that also help improve the paper. My co-authors Xin Feng and Tengfei are in the audience, and they will be closely monitoring the Q&A. Thank you. So the paper is titled "The Role of Corporate Culture in Bad Times: Evidence from the COVID-19 Pandemic." So it came to no surprise that the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is still having a devastating impact on the world economy. As financial economists, the ongoing pandemic also allow us to ask the following questions from a finance point of view. That is, how are industries or firms exposed to the public health crisis, and how do they respond? And more broadly, as some of the paper at today's symposium already helped address, what makes firm resilient? So what we do in this paper is we examine how firms with a strong organizational culture perform in the middle of a public health crisis, and also help identify some underlying mechanisms. So what our work contributes to the COVID-19 literature is the following. First, we are one of the first in the literature to develop firm-level measures of exposure and responses related to COVID-19 pandemic using textual analysis for a large sample of US firms. And then the techniques we employ, one is already mentioned in the prior paper, thank you to those authors, word embedding, and the other is correlated topic modeling. Just like John Karpov mentioned a moment ago, we hope our work will bring more interest to the finance literature on machine learning, AI, as part of a routine and technical tools. Second, our ability to develop granular measures at firm level regarding their responses to COVID-19 also allow us to gain a better understanding of the importance of organization culture and also intangible assets in general to firm value. Last but not least, given that COVID-19 is an exogenous shock to firms' fundamentals, our work also allows us to establish a causal effect of bad times, natural disaster, financial crisis, and the like on the culture value link. So this is an empirical paper, but it's also guided by prior work on the role of organization culture in firm value. So as economist Krebs describes corporate culture as how things are done and how they are meant to be done in an organization. For economists, for financial economists like us, we know that contracts works, repeated interaction works. However, those standard mechanisms, contracting like efficient wages and repeated interactions, might become too costly or infeasible when a firm is hit by an exogenous shock that was unanticipated, and there's just too many contingencies for a company to redesign its contract. As a result, Krebs comes to the conclusion that establishing a norm to do things such as organizational culture address those challenges, especially in the state of great contingencies. So that's exactly his punchline, that culture as a coordination mechanism can sustain desirable outcomes, such as employees and executives work harder without asking for higher pay in a world with unforeseen contingencies, as we are in right now, in a global pandemic. Furthermore, Wanderstein also talk about how culture developed. One major There are actually two mechanisms, and a key focus on screening. That is, like-minded people get together. So when firms potentially interview and hiring employees, they look for people whose beliefs and work ethics match with those of their own. In fact, in an AER paper, Henderson and Weinstein further elaborate that how a strong culture can achieve both lower cost of pay and higher productivity because of self-selection. So we expect that in the presence of strong culture, we'll define that also in practical terms, will be associated with increased goal alignment and higher levels of motivation among employees, and will provide needed control, like implicit mechanism versus economists commonly use explicit mechanism. So that is that's why culture might stand out as versus contracting and repeated interaction. We also anticipate the effect of culture will become more salient because it's implicit and it's unspoken rules of doing things in a challenging operational environment. For example, you do not even see what your employees are doing when they work from home. So culture will definitely matters more. So when a strong culture will empower rank and file employees as well as executives to make consistent decisions without being monitored, without being explicit contracted, and exert great effort from a long-term perspective. So that leads to our first testable hypothesis. We expect the positive culture value link is stronger in the middle of a public health crisis. As we are also fully aware that different industries and firms are hit by the pandemic drastically differently. So we further hypothesize that the corporate culture value link is stronger to industries and firms that are hit the most. So I'm expecting an interaction effect. In terms of channels, we conjecture the following two. Given that our main focus is on organization culture, one is the human capital channel. So I'm aware prior work also cite Zingala's prior papers in today's session cite Zingala's a lot. Zingala's also in his GF presidential address also talk about the importance of human capital in today's economy. So we also highlighting that particular channel, the human capital channel, in which a strong culture empowers employees to make consistent decisions and exert greater effort with a long-term orientation and resulting in higher productivity in the middle of a pandemic without asking for higher pay. We're going to demonstrate that empirically. The other is technology channel. That is in which a strong culture instill long-term orientation and make firm in the middle of a public health crisis. More likely, we all use the word pivot to online presence, as well as engage more in product and service innovation to achieve product differentiation, fostering customer loyalty, and commanding more pricing power. In our empirical analysis, we didn't show market share evidence, but we do have evidence on higher profit margins for firms with a strong culture through the channel of new product and service development. So this is an empirical paper. As I said, we do a bit of machine learning. So our sample comprises of about 3,600 earnings calls made by about 3,000 US firms during the first quarter and a bit of 2020. To measure corporate culture, we rely on our prior work that also use textual analysis word to vec, as mentioned by the prior paper in today's symposium, to capture 5 culture values. I use the color scheme. So purple color refers to the technology culture value. So that's innovation and quality. And the blue color refers to the human capital values. So that's integrity, respect, and teamwork. So all 5 corporate culture values were motivated by prior work by Gilso et al., where they manually search SP 500 firms on their value mission statements. So we focus on the top 5 values promoted by firms on their corporate website, but our corpus was based on earnings calls. So to capture strong culture empirically, we introduced an indicator variable that is the sum of a firm's 5 values as listed above is in the top quartile among all firms in 2017 and 0 otherwise. We also do robustness check by sorting strong culture within a particular industry or use industry median removed value for the sorting. So our goal is to look at the role of culture in firm performance during the pandemic, and our innovation is firm level exposure and response to COVID-19. And our study sample is a sample of earnings calls. So there are a number of empirical challenges for us to proceed. The very first one is that the goal of earnings calls is not to talk about the COVID-19 or firm responses, but to discuss business operations and firm performance. So to reduce the number of topics in call, we need to limit our attention to a subset of paragraphs that COVID-19 specific. Secondly, there are many different ways to refer to COVID-19 pandemic. As you are fully aware, one example is your former president was using a very bad reference to COVID-19. And very often in earnings calls, because it's verbal, we use the transcripts. The term COVID-19 or its common variation like coronaviruses are not even mentioned. So I give you some examples like social distancing, CARES Act, or today the PPP loan program. They were not even there, but from the context, the firm was really talking about COVID-19. So we need an expanded word list to tag COVID-19 related paragraphs in the calls. And for that, we refer to word to vec technique. Lastly, given that we want to have a granular measure of firms' exposure and responses to COVID-19, so we really need to develop a firm level measure instead of industry level measure. So our measures are going to be at a firm quarter level. Actually, we only have 1 quarter of data. So here is our machine learning steps. What is missing here, which is also very important in textual analysis of textual data, is pre-processing steps. I refer interested audience to our paper. So after cleaning the earnings transcripts, what we do next is to identify a word list of COVID-19 synonyms. That there's no standard English dictionary to develop a synonym for COVID-19. What we do is to apply word embedding with the seed word as introduced by the World Health Organization. So the official term COVID-19 to the corpus of about 3,600 of earnings calls. Then we are able to have about 1,000 also possible synonyms. We understand textual analysis sometimes could be like black box. So what we do is to impose a little bit of human judgment. 4 of us, I'll take a look at an output, a word list, a list of potential synonyms to COVID-19 by using our personal judgment. And by consensus, we keep up we return 400 or so words as a possible synonym to COVID-19 and use those words in our next step to tag all the paragraphs in earnings calls and identify about 11% of the discussion refers to COVID-19. So that helps us to limit the number of topics to be COVID-19 specific instead of a general discussion as in a typical earnings call. Once we have our focused corpus of COVID-19 related paragraphs, the second machine learning technique we apply in this paper is correlated topic modeling. A little bit like John just a moment ago asked about the categorization. So here our categorization is not a binary. We are applying a topic modeling that also used in Gerald's work in M&As. But here, what we do is we allow topics to be correlated. So for example, supply shock, demand shock, or exposure to China, those discussions could be potentially correlated, and we allow that correlation in our analysis. So in the end, we get 35 topics from correlated topic modeling. And by eyeballing them among 4 of us, we identify 15. And there are also some common themes among the 15. We are able to group them into 6 types of exposures and 4 types of responses. So at the end, firm level measure of exposure to responses is just a frequency count of those topics showing up in the related discussions within earnings call. So here you show your example, given that prior work has already shown and also media coverage a lot about the negative shocks to industries and firms. So let me highlight what we show here is responses mentioned by firms in their earnings calls during the first 4 months of 2020 last year. So the size of the word corresponds to the frequency of those show up within a topic. As my response to the prior paper, that the topic like machine learning techniques these days, not only just look at single word, we have the capacity to understand the meaning of phrases. So that's why some here you will see phrases as well, like through word embedding to interpret a phrase as a vector and do a lot of other stuff. So what we have here are the 4 responses by firms during their earnings call, especially during the first 4 months of 2020. So we capture 4 of them. So community engagement, so kind of a stakeholder orientation, care about my stakeholders, my community, my employees, my customers, and also a lot discussion about cost cutting, and also pivoting to online presence. We call that digital transformation. And lastly is new product. Firm also talk a lot about new product service development. Okay, I have to accelerate. So here is an overall about the relative frequencies of different topics discussed, consistent with our intuition. The most of discussion about the negative shocks, so like dropping demand, disruption to supply chain, and employee welfare. But also we have digital, the good stuff is how firms react, is like digital transformation, new product development, etc. Here also just showing kind of, given this is a new measure we introduced to the literature, this also showing like a kind of just a sanity check about our measures. We show that the top 3 industries pivoting to digital transformation, like business equipment, utility, consumer durable, and top 3 industries that really emphasize new product development would be consumer non-durable, wholesale retail, and business equipment. So this is asked by Gerald and Ron during their review, which is very helpful for us to think about the validation. How about like textual analysis is just noise in, noise out. So what we do here to validate our measure about firm level exposure to COVID-19. We use measures in the existing literature. For example, we use location-based, like new cases and cumulative cases, and also lockdown, and correlate that with our measure of overall exposure. We expect strong positive correlation, and we see that right here. Then we also have others regarding how much labor is utilized in the industry, and also what's the freedom of work from home, and also exposure to China. We get also intuitive correlation. For example, a firm's flexibility for their employee to work at home is negatively correlated with our measure of exposure. Here we are, the very first main result is about outperformance of firms with strong culture in the middle of the pandemic. We use stock return as a measure. Here, according to the fourth column, we show that compared to firms with a weak corporate culture, firms with a strong culture outperform by 4 percentage points in terms of return. The unconditional performance, unconditional return for that period is about 44% drop. So this is like 10% improvement. Our second hypothesis is the interaction effect. We expect that firm with a strong culture outperform the conditioning on them being hit the most. So we focus on the interaction between overall exposure and a strong culture. And we show that reduces monthly return drop by 0.1 percentage point as compared to on average firm drop by 1.1 percentage point. So everyone is suffering a price decline, but firm with strong culture suffer less. Given we are not the first paper to talk about firm resilience, we make sure that our result of strong culture make firms more resilient, remain there after controlling for other known factors such as firms' ESG practices, industry's ability to work from home, and the firm's prior experience with epidemic experiences such as SARS, and also their exposure to China. So this highlighting controlling for all those known factors, our result remains. So what we have so far is we're able to cross-validate our measure. We also establish firm with strong culture, associated with better performance than their counterparts result. The last is to use granular data of firm level exposure responses to delineate the channel through which corporate culture make firms outperform. So here, the left-hand side variable are textual analysis based output regarding firms' responses. So what we show here is that, especially interaction term, that firm with a strong culture are more likely to talk about and practice community engagement. Interestingly, they are now more likely to engage in cost cutting, but they're also going to be more open to pivotal to online presence, and also focus on developing new products and services. The last bit is, as I mentioned before, corporate culture is a summary measure, but the underlying, we actually have two subculture measures. One is people dimension. The people dimension is like teamwork, and technology dimension, which is like quality and innovation. So the last bit is to delineate the channel looking at cost, layoff, and productivity, and the bottom line. So what we have here is showing that in yellow highlights, that firm with a strong people or technology color are associated with higher productivity as we hypothesized. And interestingly, also firm with a strong people culture are no more likely to lay off employees. The last bit is showing that firm with strong people culture and or technology culture associated with higher profitability and also higher profit margin, consistent with our conjecture that new product developments pivotal to online presence help this firm to retain customer and generate higher margins. So let me conclude. So what we do in this paper is to using machine learning techniques, word embedding, and correlated topic modeling to identify, to highlighting the important role of corporate culture that make firm outperform. We also correlate strong culture to actions taken by the firms, such as community engagement, online presence, and a new product development. So our evidence provides support for the hypothesis that culture is an important intangible asset designed to meet unforeseen contingencies like today's COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.